Now let's take a look at how we define and work with classes in PHP. Classes are defined using the class keyword. And I'm going to define a simple class and call it my class. And inside my class, I'll have my properties, which can otherwise be known as attributes. Otherwise known as variables. And these define the state of our object. Okay, so I'm going to define a few properties here. I'm going to define a const, call it my const, equals, and let's just set it equal to some value. And let us define a static property, and let's call it static variable, and let's call it my static variable. And with a static variable, we're going to see how they vary. Here I can define some public static variables. And when we say static, this simply means that we can define class properties or methods as static, and this makes them accessible without needing an instantiation of the class. So we'll see that in action shortly. So I'm going to define 3 different types of static variables. Public, so that's my public static variable. And I am going to define 2 more. And these will be private and protected. So let's change this. Private, protected. Okay. And now let us just declare some regular variables. So let's say public, and let's just say we have a property. And I'm just keeping this example really simple. So let's also have another public property, and let's call this one instance property. And I'm not going to instantiate this right now. I will use a constructor to instantiate my instance property. Let me have a couple others. One protected. And finally, a private property. So let's call this, and let's just say private. Now we're going to define a constructor. And we are going to use the public keyword, and we're defining a function. So remember, a constructor is also a function. It behaves like one. And in PHP, to declare a function, we need 2 underscores and the construct keyword. and that will create a constructor for us. So anything inside our constructor will automatically execute upon creating an object from this class. And in the constructor, I am going to pass in my instance property that I declared up here. And I am going to set this instance property equal to the value that is passed in. All right, so the this keyword refers to itself. All right, so it refers to the class itself. Now let me define a couple of methods in my class. So let's say we have a public method or function, and let me just call it my method. This will not have a parameter, and I'm just going to print, let me use the print statement here. I'm just going to say method in my class. All right, so let's define a couple more. So we also can define final functions or methods, and these cannot be overridden. So let me make a comment here. Right, so if a class or function is declared as final, that means the class cannot be inherited. You cannot inherit from the class, and the function cannot be overridden. So final function, and I'm just going to say you cannot override me, and I'm just going to leave it empty. And now I'm going to declare what is known as a magic method. And magic methods simply have the double underscore, and I'm going to say toString. And it's just going to return a property. And a destructor is used in some special cases. So I'm going to define one here, public function and a destruct method. So it's the opposite of the constructor. And when an object is no longer needed or referenced, then it will call the destruct or the destructor method. So destruct. And I'm just going to print destroy an object. And finally, I'm going to declare one static function or method, public static, and call it my static method. And again, we'll just print a string. All right, so we have quite a bit going on here in our class. We have a constant properties, static properties, a constructor and destructor. We have a magic method, we have a static method, and we also have a final method. So to demonstrate some of the functionality of this class, I am going to create a new file, call it demo class.php, or Let's call it my object, simple object. That should fit with a simple class. And I am going to require my class. So simple class dot PHP. Okay, so now let us test out the functionality of this class. Now, usually when working with a class, we first have to instantiate the class. However, in this case, since we have a constant and a few static methods, a static method and a property, we can simply echo my class and use a scope resolution operator, which is the double colon, and I want to echo the value of my const. I also want to echo my static variable. And I also want to echo my static method. Okay, so let us save this and let us test it. So let us now refresh our directory and let us click on our simple object.php, which is inheriting from simple class, or not inheriting, it is requiring our simple class in the file. All right, so we're getting everything in one line. So let me clear that up and save this and refresh. Right, so we get the values from from my constant, which is some value, from my static variable, we get that value. And we also execute our static method. So when something is declared as static in a class, we can simply access it using the scope resolution operator, which is our double colon. Now let us instantiate an instance. So let's instantiate our class. Or let's just say object. And I'm going to echo, or not echo, first let us store our class in a variable. So my class equals new my class. So we have to use the new keyword to be able to create a new instance of a class. And let us pass in a string. New instance of my class. All right, so let's leave it as that. And let us now echo some other properties that we have in our class. So first, let me echo my class, and to access the other properties or methods in our class, we can use the arrow notation here. So I want to access property. I also want to access my instance property. And finally, let me call a method. And remember, with methods, we have to include our parentheses. So let me copy my break, our new line. Let me save this And let's run it. All right, so we get public property and my method, the method in my class, and then we get our destructor. All right, so let us check and see what the issue could be. First, let me copy our break to our final line. Let us try single quotations. And let us now save. Let's go back and now refresh. Okay, so now we're getting our new instance. All right, now let's look at how we would inherit using PHP. So let me create a new PHP file and let me call it, we can call this a child class. .php. And this child class is going to require or we could just use require once. And we need to require our simple class. All right, so now when we inherit using PHP, we need the extends keyword. So I'm going to declare a class called my other class and use the extends keyword to be able to inherit from my class. In this class, I'm just going to have a function and we're going to call it print protected property. And I'm going to do an echo and I'm going to use the this keyword and my arrow function, and I am just going to echo the protected property that I am inheriting from my parent class. And I am also going to override a method, and I'm going to override the method called my method. And I am going to use the parent keyword along with the scope resolution operator, and I am simply going to call my method from the parent class and also print that it's running from my other class. Okay, so let me save this and let us test it out in our simple object file. So we'll also now need to require my child class file .php, and let me comment this out. And now I am going to instantiate my other class and set it equal to a new my other class, and I'm going to pass in an instance and let's also say my other class, and now we're going to call our functions. So first I want to print my protected property, and I also want to call my method that was overridden from the parent class. All right, so let us save this and let us refresh our file. And again, let us add our break statements after everything. So let us do all right. So let me copy this. And let's save it, and now refresh. And we see here that now it is printing. This protected is coming from our protected variable. So this is the method in my parent class, and it is being run from my other class. And then of course, the child class is accessing that destructor function. So the object is destroyed now that we have reached the end of these function calls. All right. So final thing I'd like to show is just the declaration of a final class. And if we were to declare a final class and call it you cannot extend me, then essentially we would not be able to inherit from this class as we have done up here with my other class.